So, topic of today's session is going to be about the psychological safety and looking for ways to increase psychological safety in agile teams. And I'm focusing right now on agile teams as a way to begin working on psychological safety, but also because psychological safety in agile teams is very important. It's a key aspect of a team if you really want to get into a good collaboration and communication mode within the team. So you need the psychological safety in there. And I think also the team is a safe place to start off with psychological safety. And that's where the two topics are a little bit intertwined because you need some initial safety to work on psychological safety. And to dive into that topic, let me share my presentation right now. So looking at increasing psychological safety in agile teams, I think we can skip this as some more information about the books and the games I created. But what I actually would like to do right now to kick this off is a safety check. And this is a safety check that I do a lot when I do a retrospective in the team. And it's something that you actually do at the start, checking if people feel safe enough in the retrospective to share stuff in there. And what I normally do in the retrospective is to ask people to give a number between 1 to 5 anonymously, stating how safe that they feel in the retrospective. And where number 1 is like, I don't feel safe at all. I'd rather not be in this meetup. Where 5 would be, well, no problem. I can talk about everything. I feel completely safe. Well, let's practice a safety check and let's see if we can do a safety check right here in this meetup to check how you feel about being in this meetup and how safe that you feel right now doing a meetup about psychological safety. So if you want to join this, please switch to Slido and either scan the code or use the number below, the 217265, to join the meeting. And I'm going to switch to the Slido results so that we can see the actual voting. So if you're all ready to vote, then I would say cast your vote right now, how safe that you feel about being in this meetup about psychological safety. Okay, just to check, is everybody able to join the Slido poll?
It had some delay, so maybe you should refresh page a couple of times if you don't see polls.
I got 8 votes right now. It's still counting, so I think we got.
Of course, guys, if somebody has some problems with joining the board, you can, of course, write in the chat, or you can say that so we can help you reach the board where you can score according to this question.
Exactly. Let us know if you got some problems.
Yeah.
Joining
so you just
the vote.
have to type slido.com and then enter the password you see, or you can just scan the QR code.
Okay. Did everybody cast their vote? I'm assuming they did. I'm seeing 10 people in the meeting. We have 8 votes, so I'm still missing 2 in there, but I'm just going to count those votes as 0. But even then, if you look at the results right now, we got most of the people. Now we got one more, cool. Most of the people scoring a 5, and we got a couple of people scoring a 4, which I think is, looking at the topic that we have, is a pretty good score. The reason you do a score like this in a retrospective is to find out that people feel safe enough to bring up any topics. And if you get a low score in a retrospective, typically that's something that you need to act upon in your retrospective. If people are in the retrospective and stating like, oh, I don't really feel safe to say something, I don't really feel safe being in this meeting, then you're not going to get a valuable result out of that. So that's a reason to do this kind of safety checks in the retrospective. If we look right now in this meetup, I think we got a pretty nice situation. We got 80% of the people feeling perfectly safe, like we can bring up any topic. We got a couple of people casting for, which is still a pretty good score. So the safety check is telling me right now, okay, let's go ahead. We're going to have an interesting meeting because people feel safe enough to talk about the topic of psychological safety and feel safe enough to share their ideas and share their experiences. So let me switch back to the presentation. And on to the topic of psychological safety. And for psychological safety, I'd like to do the definition from Amy Edmondson. Amy Edmondson, professor of leadership management at Harvard Business School. And she's been doing a lot of work, a lot of research, but also very practical application of psychological safety. And she defined psychological safety as a shared belief that an environment is safe for interpersonal risk. And there's a couple of key words in this definition. First of all, she states it's a shared belief. So this is not a belief of one person or a couple of persons in there. This is a belief that is shared in the group that you are looking at, shared in the group where you would like to have this psychological safety, you'd like to have this condition. So it's an understanding, a belief. People are convinced that they feel safe enough to take those risks. And we're talking here about interpersonal risks. So we're not talking here about risk that somebody is taking in the work that they are doing, but we're talking about risk that can happen within the interaction between people in the team, between people in the room. And with this shared belief, people believe that the environment is safe enough to take those risks. What's the consequence if we have this kind of psychological safety? Well, the consequence is that it will increase personal engagement. If people feel safe enough to say anything, if people feel safe enough to take risks with the other people in the room, with the other people in the team, they're going to get much more personal engaged in there, and they will feel more comfortable to speak up and to bring up any issues that might be on their mind. It also means that team members will feel safe to take risks, to try out something new, to try out something that they haven't done before. Feeling safe enough that if they fail, it's not going to be a big problem. They know that they are allowed to fail, provided that they can learn, that they know that they're not going to be blamed by their colleagues if something goes wrong. If something goes wrong, they feel comfortable enough to admit that it went wrong. They feel comfortable to admit their mistakes. And they also feel comfortable enough to discuss any conflict. And this is also very important if you want to get team working to a higher level. If there's an issue, if there's a problem, you want to make sure that the problem is brought up. So if there's a conflict, you want to discuss it. You want to get an insight into the conflict. You want to understand what's the reason behind that conflict, because that's the best way to solve it. So if there's psychological safety in a team, that will help to bring up this kind of discussions and to solve conflicts which are there in the team, and to solve them as quickly as possible before they really go out of hand. With psychological safety, you can create an environment in a team where people also feel safe to share ideas. something new, something that they've been thinking about, something that they think that might work, but don't know for sure. If that safety isn't there, chances are that people won't bring up that kind of stuff. They will think of something, but they do not dare to say it. They're afraid to bring it up. They're afraid to talk about it with their colleagues. They might talk with one or two colleagues privately, but they don't dare to bring it up in the full room where the whole team is there. And you want to create that environment with psychological safety where people feel safe enough to bring it up and to try out something, to experiment, to say, well, this is something new. We haven't done it before. Let's experiment. Let's try it out. Let's see how that works out. And let's see if this helps us to something that we would like to accomplish. And they also feel safe enough to ask for feedback during the process, during when they are trying out stuff or when they have done something, to ask like, okay, how did this go? How did you feel about this? Did you think that this was an improvement? Did you think that we're doing better right now? Did you see any issues? And they want to do this because they want to learn. They want to get better at stuff. And the best way to get better is to get feedback. So creating this psychological safety will help a team to try out new stuff, to take some risk, to take the chances, to experiment and to become better. This has been clear already that this is a key issue if you want to really improve teams in your organization. There's a famous Google research that has been done on teams looking at what's the really distinguishing factor if you look at high performing team within Google, and they rank psychological safety as the #1 aspect of those teams. So teams who are truly performing better tend to have a higher psychological safety. So just a quick check with the room right now. Is there any questions right now on the definition of psychological safety? What it comprises? What's the idea behind psychological safety before we continue? Any questions on that? I don't see any questions and I don't think there's anything in the chat. So let's continue to what are the things that we can do to increase psychological safety in teams. And I think the first step is to start with raising awareness. So making people aware what psychological safety is and making them aware if there's anything that might hinder or that might be a barrier to psychological safety or when psychological safety is low. And actually, the safety check that we did at the start of this meetup is already a great way to increase psychological safety by creating awareness. If I do this in a retrospective and there's a couple of people who score low on this, scoring on 1 or 2, what I do is I give the results back to the group. And again, the scoring is anonymously. So we know that there's a couple of people in the meeting who don't feel safe. We don't know who they are. And actually, it doesn't even matter who's not feeling safe and who's feeling safe. What's more important is that at that point in time, we don't have the environment where everybody feels safe enough to speak up. And by raising the awareness that there's a couple of people in the room who don't feel safe, encouraging a discussion about this, that's already a first step to see, okay, is there any barrier in here? Is there anything that we can think of why people don't feel safe? And typically, if there's a couple of people in the room who feel safe, they might already think like, okay, what can we do to increase safety? Is there anything that we should talk about? Is there any issue that we should discuss first before we continue to increase the safety? So giving the score back to the room, raising the awareness is something that already can help. Retrospectives are a great way to increase psychological safety. And again, this is a double-edged sword because you want to have that safety in your retrospective, but you're not going to get it automatically. But when you start doing retrospective and start planning time to reflect, start giving time to the team to reflect, to learn, to dive into how they've been doing in the sprint and to share insights, the psychological safety is going to be increasing every retrospective a little bit. Every step of the time, it's going to get better in there. So by doing retrospectives is a way to increase the safety. and to bring psychological safety in the team to a higher level. Another thing you can do to increase psychological safety is play games. And the reason why this works is because typically if you play a game, safety is more or less something that comes naturally with a game. If you play the game is a fun situation, it's a relaxing situation. It's a situation where people feel safe to try out stuff. If there's a game and something goes wrong, okay, then we're going to play it again, then we're going to play it a little bit different, and maybe this time it will work. So games are a kind of safe environment to try out stuff and to try something. And playing serious games with teams can help to increase this level of psychological safety. You're more or less creating a small bubble of safety to practice with safety and to become more safe as a team. Another thing you can do is also to use self-assessments with teams. So where teams reflect on themselves, how things are going, and to find ways to improve in there. Encouraging that kind of reflection over having somebody else coming in assessing your team is also something to increase psychological safety. Another thing in psychological safety is the balance between trust and safety. And trust is the condition that will drive the safety. And one way to increase trust in teams is by being transparent and open, by being open about what's happening in the team, by being open as a leader in the team, being open as a scrum master, and encouraging this openness also in the team. The more transparency that you will be creating in the team, the more trust there will be. And this is something that you can actually start with from day one when you're creating a team. Be as transparent as possible on the way that you're doing your work. Be transparent on where you are as a team. An easy way to create this kind of transparency, and what you see in a lot of teams actually, is by creating a task board. It's giving you transparent insight in how the team is working right now, what are the tasks that the team is working on. It's giving you insight on the progress in the team. And this kind of transparency will actually encourage the trust that the team members get in the team, seeing that they can make progress in the team. And that will increase psychological safety in there. Another thing to increase psychological safety is by fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion in the team. And this is where you actually need all three of them. Diverse teams tend to perform better. That's also something that we can see from research. If you have people who are like-minded in a team, it might look like initially that they will go faster because there's less conflict, they think the same about topics. But in the long run, teams who are more diverse, where there's different kind of meaning, different kind of opinions in a team, tend to perform better. This is something that we can see in the research. And it's not just the diversity that you have in a team, but it's also creating an environment where people feel included. So it's not just a matter of making a diverse team, but people should be able to be their whole self in the team, to bring up issues where they think differently about a matter. And if you look at equity, this is actually the enabler of this inclusion. So you're giving people the means, you're helping them, you're fostering them to bring up different ideas in there, you're looking out for different ideas, you really want to include all opinions in there, having a diverse team. And in the long run, this will also increase the psychological safety in your team. As a leader, it's important how you will lead a team to bring the psychological safety to the team. And it's about leading with empathy. It's about being really interested in the people that you have in the team, not just as a person being there, and certainly not just as having a couple of resources in your team, but you really want to listen, you really want to understand what's happening in the team, you really want to understand and learn the people that you have in the team, and also listen to their concerns, listen to their problems, and be curious about what's happening in the team. Be curious to learn and not going to be judging. If you start judging your team members, that's really going to be destroying your psychological safety. And the last step, and this goes back to a lot of the things I've mentioned in there already, is just be yourself. Be authentic. be the way that you truly are, and also allow other people in your team to be authentic. And as a leader, that means also be vulnerable. Be open on that you won't know all the answers. Be open that you will also fail. You will also make mistakes, as everybody will make mistakes. And as a leader, be it a team leader, be it a scrum master, you're also an example for the team. So if you show that you are vulnerable, if you show that you are authentic and that you will also make mistakes, you're also setting the level for other people to also make mistakes and also show their true selves in there. And that's also going to increase psychological safety in your team. This is a lot of things that you can do. And what I want to make clear already is safety is not something that you can automatically bring to people. What you can do is influence the environment. You can influence the behavior. You can be an example, and that will help. So you can't automatically make people safe. Like, okay, we're starting a meeting right now and everybody's going to be safe. But you can make it safer for people by doing this kind of activity. This is the kind of stuff that can help to increase psychological safety. Okay, again, let me do a quick check in the room, because I'm guessing by now there might be some questions on this kind of stuff, or there might be somebody who's like to share something about things that they have done to increase psychological safety, things that they've seen happening in the team. Anybody who'd like to share some experience or something that they've been doing? Everybody is very quiet. And it's not a safety. We did a safety check. We had some 4 and 5. So if
Vladimir
not,
raised the hand. Okay, Vladimir.
Hello, good afternoon for everyone. I
hello.
would like to ask the question regarding from position from Scrum Master, how we can foster safetiness in the team if the environment around you is not the safe, or pretty much is not on the same level as you want to do with your team.
Mhm.
How to deal with that, and and also the second one, what in some situation, like you can see right now, we raise all like 4 and 5 that feel safe, but when you ask the question, you can see that we are not so safe to talk about this. Then what does that mean? That like strong word to say we lie, but like this is also some, let's say, hint or something that we need to think about this. And I would like you to, if you can comment those two. Thank you.
Mhm. Well, let's start with the first question. So how are you going to deal with safety in your team when the environment where your team is in doesn't feel safe? And this is something that I've seen changing over time in team, because even if the environment which you are in as a team is not that safe, you can still work on safety within your team. So there's a lot of stuff that I mentioned here that you can actually do within your team that will raise the level of safety in your team. And when the level of safety is raised, the team will get stronger and the team will feel more confident. And if they feel more confident, and if they also start to feel more like a team and not as a bunch of individual people, it becomes easier for the team to challenge some of the stuff that is outside the team. Because initially, all team members will be in the team and will feel like, yeah, okay, I'm an individual. Who am I to challenge something outside my team in the organization? But if they find out that they are actually a strong team, that they have a shared opinion about stuff, that they have shared ideas about something that they would like to try out, not just one person, but as a team, which is something that has established in the team due to psychological safety, it will feel easier for the team as a whole and also for team members individually to try something out, to challenge the thinking in the organization. The question will then be how the organization will react to that. If the team feels strong enough and they become successful in it, chances are that the organization will see this and will say, well, okay, the team seems to do pretty well. They got some good ideas. They're able to try them out. They're able to deliver results. So let's give them some more space so they can By raising the level in the team, you can actually raise the level of psychological safety in the organization. It can also go the other way around, and I've also seen that, unfortunately, where the team tries out stuff and the organization reacts like, okay, but that's not what we want to see. That the level of safety in the organization actually will not go up or will actually go down. And the result will be that the team will then turn more inward bound, will be more inward looking, doing the stuff that they can do themselves without depending on the organization outside. And for the team, that might still give them some good results. For the organization as a whole, this is not going to give the results that you would like. So my advice to organizations would be, first of all, trust your teams, trust the people in your organization, and give them space to try stuff and see how that works out. And in a lot of situations, that will actually work pretty good if you give them space to do that. And that way in the organization, you're creating a very basic level environment to increase psychological safety and giving space to teams to bring up the safety level in a team and bring up the safety level of all. So actually, you don't need to do a big investment in the organization to bring up psychological safety across the organization, across all teams. The only thing that you have to do is give them space. If you do it the other way around, this is going to hurt your performance as an organization. So be aware that you just have to make a small investment by just trusting your team to get big results out of this. If you look at the scoring versus the actual behavior, yeah, there can be a difference. And what I usually do if I see that kind of difference is to give it back to the group, to give it back to the team. And this is actually something that I did already by just mentioning like, okay, we had scores from 4 to 5, so I'm assuming that at least a couple of people feel safe in this meetup to bring up a question. And what we saw happening was that there was actually one person who asked a question already. So just giving it back to the group that there was a score with 4 to 5, which gives the assumption that people would feel safe to bring up issues, got at least one person starting with the question and got the discussion going. So giving it back, reflecting back to the score that we had, and discussing the topic of psychological safety, first bullet on the sheet, raising awareness, already helped to start with this discussion. So was this useful answer? Did this help you?
Yes, thank you a lot.
You're welcome. Well, for the next step, let's go into the game situation right now. And for the game that we're going to be playing, we're going to be using coaching cards that I've developed. And these are coaching cards on the topic of psychological safety. The cards that are going to be in this game right now are a preliminary version of the cards. Right now, these cards have been extended and there's a complete deck of more than 60 cards in there. But for this game, we're going to use a subset of the cards to show the concept of psychological safety and show a way that we can actually play with these cards. And to play with these cards, we're going to be using a Jamboard. And let me share the link of the Jamboard. In the chat so that you can join it. Okay, I just shared the link in the chat and I see a couple of people joining already. That's great. So let's see. So to play this game, I picked out a couple of cards from a deck on psychological safety, and this card deck is available for download, and I'm actually making it available through this link, benliners.com/agileHumans. with a discount. I'm selling these cards on my website basically because these cards provide value. You can use them to coach situations in there. If you're interested in the cards, you can download them with a discount right now. So what we're going to do is pick a first card. And what I would like you to do right now is to look at the statement on this card. People, I see somebody moving the card. I'm going to move it back right now. We're going to pick one card at a time. People are comfortable with speaking up when something is bothering them. And to play this game, this card is going to be the red one. And everybody who's in the game right now can pick one of the red avatars which are there. Think about how this feels right now in your own team, in your own organization, and move your avatar to the square where you think this is. So I see somebody already moving too often. So if you think like, okay, yeah, often people feel comfortable speaking up when something's bothering them, let's move to often. If you feel this rarely, move to rarely, and we also have the never and the always. Okay. I think most of the people have taken position right now. So let's see what we have with this question. We have a lot of people moving to often, and one of the avatars moved to rarely. It's somebody in the often square who would like to share a story, would like to share a situation where there was something that was bothering people and where they spoke up. I see a hand going up there. So Rika, you want to share something?
Hope you can see me. Yeah, sure. So basically, I mean, like we have a very small team. So I guess that's why we feel very like free and safe to share basically everything. Especially like we have two CEOs and they share with us even like, let's say like some like personal moments with us. So I guess that's maybe the reason why the teammates feel more encouraged to kind of, you know, like feel safe to share some things. And when I say share some things, I mean like share things like basically work-wise, right?
Mm-hmm. So you make CEO. What I see here is the CEO is also acting as a kind of example in there. It's like sharing own stuff, feeling vulnerable,
Yeah.
setting the environment for other people to share, bringing his or herself to the meeting as a whole.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's what I'm hearing here, which is also making a difference. That's making other people also feel comfortable to bring up stuff.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's the reason, like one of the reasons, and maybe because we are mainly the same age, like even like the colleagues and the CEOs, like we are the same age, or maybe like we are like there is like 1 or 2 years difference.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe even that like small age gap is kind of like making us feel closer because we maybe have, you know, like similar problems, similar issues, similar way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else who's in the often and would like to share an anecdote or an example from their organization or about people feeling comfortable speaking up?
Yeah, maybe I can share.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Jovana here. Okay, well, I conduct 4 teams and they're pretty much diverse. So we have a lot of people from India, a lot of people from Serbia, Germany. And because I have 4 teams, for example, the communication sometimes is not good. I mean, not on the higher level, but, you know, on the people level. So when, for example, we have a problem with the pipelines or the code reviews, the people can share openly what they're bothering them. So I had a situation maybe 2 days ago that one of the developers had a massive code that needs to be reviewed, and we have a girl who is doing a deep dive in it. So she does not know must and nice to have. She's just reviewing it, and she's really good at it. But we have that pain because we are trying to make it faster to deliver to the customer, but she's doing it really thorough. So the guys that are having pain with her, I mean, not pain, but had the problems, they said, okay, we have a problem with the pipelines, we have a problem with delivery, and we are waiting for you to review the code. And she was like, okay, I'm aware, but that is my, I mean, that is how I do it. I will try to make it faster, try to make it easier for you. So it is a good thing that is really open, because this is only one person that is blocking. So she's aware of it, and she's blocking all 4 teams, for example, you know, because we are doing the code reviews as it goes. So, and she's aware. It is a good thing that they can speak openly, because they all have a same issue, and but only one person was the problem, and she is aware of it. And she is like, and nobody attacked her or everything, and she's aware. So this is a really, really good thing that they can also say open, and she also can say openly that she's aware of it. So this is, I mean, this is just a plain example. We have a lot of them more, but yeah.
I think it's a great example, actually, being aware, like, this is the situation, this is how it is right now, without judging anybody, without judging her or judging the other people. Like, no, we know this is a situation, we have to deal with it, we have to work around this, and that's okay. Being comfortable enough to bring it up and to get, say, the elephant out, which is there, will help the team to progress on this. So I think it's a good situation to describe this. Cool, thank you for sharing.
Not a problem, thank you.
We have one person in rarely. I'm wondering if that person could share a story why it's rarely in his or her team.
Yes, hi, Martin here. So currently I'm unemployed, so I referred to my previous company and my previous team. I think if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, in my previous company we have something called Flaccid Scrum. So it's kind of Scrum, but it's not. So a lot of common problems like user stories not prepared, developers take too much work, QAs do not know what to test, and little pieces just pile up until someone blows out. So usually retrospectives, if people attend to them, are just complaining and shouting, this is your fault, this is your fault, this is your fault. So people, when they go there, usually say, okay, I don't want to be here, I don't want to get in any kind of problem, so I will just keep quiet. And if someone asks me if I have a problem, I will tell. If no one asks me, then I will sit for 1 hour and that's it. So
yeah, okay, well, I think that, yeah, this shows that the people in that don't feel comfortable bringing up issues, and they just sit out on the retrospective.
yeah.
And I'm not sure if they are aware of this, actually, because
well, people are aware, but usually they feel lonely. So if only one person speak and everyone else are quiet, then this will not be elevated to the higher management, to the senior management. And because of that, they usually, okay, I don't have support for this, and I will just shut up.
Yeah, actually, this is something that I see happening more often in organizations, that people are just sitting in the retrospective, waiting it to be over. And what I see with people who are facilitating the retrospective is that it tends to make them uncomfortable if this is happening. If they feel uncomfortable, they start talking more.
Yeah.
They start leading the retrospective, they start talking more, they start telling more. And actually the way to get around this is to do the opposite thing, is to become quiet and to give space to the other people to either come out, and if nothing really happens, just stop the retrospective. Because basically, if you're just talking for an hour as a facilitator of retrospective and everybody else is quiet, that's not going to bring you much benefit.
Yeah.
And the idea behind this kind of coaching cards would be, because it would actually be a fun thing to play in a retrospective like that, is to bring out the card and see what happens. Because I was assuming that, okay, if everybody say, no, this never happens in our site, okay, then we can start the retrospective. If you all feel comfortable to speak up, okay, let's do it. But if people don't feel comfortable, let's raise the issue and let's make that the issue of the retrospective. Because if people are not talking in the retrospective, that's not going to help the team. It's not going to help the retrospective, but it's also not going to help the team. So making them aware that this issue is there and spending 15 minutes on this issue can actually make it a great retrospective instead of trying to reflect back on the sprint, because that's not going to work if people don't feel comfortable to speak up. So this is a situation where these kind of cards can help to get the discussion going. Okay, Martin, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's move to the next card. And I'm going to size this one down. And just put it down there. And the next one, it looks a bit green, but it's supposed to be yellow. So we're going to use the yellow avatar for this one. People are comfortable asking their colleagues for help. Again, put yourself in the square where you think this is a situation for your team, for your organization. Okay, I think most people moved their avatar. Well, it's interesting to see already something with just 2 different questions in there. And seeing a lot of people move here into the always area, like, okay, if there's something that a colleague can help you with, I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to ask for help. And a couple of people in the often. So this tends to look like, okay, asking for help versus being comfortable speaking up as something important to them. It's easy for people to ask for help. And I think this is actually something that you see a lot in teams. People feel more comfortable just asking a colleague, certainly on a one-to-one situation, instead of bringing it up in a group, than bringing up an issue or bringing up a problem. So anybody who can share a story about the always, like asking for help, how that helps them as a team, that people are doing this. So Rika, you want to share?
Zorica,
Yeah,
here you
I
are.
will be short. Zorica, it's fine. Yeah, but it's Zorica. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. So basically, as I said, we're a small team. So basically, like not most, but all of some tasks we do together. So it's very common for like more people to do one thing, or like to work on one thing, or to kind of like have their own part in one common task.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I personally, because I'm very long in that company compared to other colleagues, I usually like they kind of ask me for help. So I am not really in a position to kind of ask other people, because like I'm usually the person who's gonna help. But like there are times when I just cannot like find time for some things, and I will always ask them. So like basically, I think again, maybe it's because the team is small. However, I mean, if the team is small, it's not going to guarantee that the people are going to kind of get along, you know, like, I mean, just to make it clear. But if the team is small and if people work well for like a certain period of time, I guess that kind of proximity is going to, you know, like be created. So kind of people feel free to reach out to each other.
Yeah. You mentioned having a small team, and I think this is also a key issue that I see in a lot of organizations. Bringing together
if
a
the
larger
company
group.
is huge, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. But if you manage to create smaller groups of people working together, a smaller team, the interaction is going to be more intense. It's going to be easier for people to ask for help, to work together, to feel safe enough to bring up issues. So one of the things, if you want to increase performance of your organization, is to bring it down into smaller teams, not groups, but really teams where people can work together. And small can be pretty small. So the traditional number 5 plus 2 plus minus 2, what people are saying, or 7 plus minus 2. Well, a team of 9 is rather big if you want to create that safety. So you might reconsider, if you're having teams of 8 or 9 or 10 people, to bring them down into 2 teams of 5 people if you want to increase that interaction or increase the performance. Okay, let's pick another one. Let's see how we're doing by time, by the way. Okay, we still have some time. Yeah, I think this is also an interesting one. So we openly discuss our mistakes so that we avoid the risk of repeating them. And let's make a little bit stronger, even not just openly, but actively. So that would mean actually more or less hunt for mistakes. We're going to take the third category here. So these ones, to move yourself into the room. Now it's going to be interesting. We're going to get pretty diverse answers in here. All the squares are taken. Okay, this varies from always to never to rarely. And I think it will be interesting to see if we have a story from never. So never discuss our mistakes. So this will be really an unsafe situation.
Yeah, so I don't know if I should hijack this meeting once again or not.
No, please, this is great learning for everyone. So
Yeah.
please share your stories.
I will explain situation that happened yesterday in my previous company. I was working there for 5 years, so I still have a lot of friends there, and I'm in daily contact with them. So a colleague called me yesterday to tell me situation. 2 weeks ago, some security company was hired to do the pen testing, and they found a couple of big issues. It was forwarded to the product owner, who did not read the mail. He saw it, but it was something that he just said, okay, I don't want to bother with this now. And so he marked it as read and move on. They had sprint planning, they create everything they need to do. And 2 days ago, CEO called because they gave a lot of money for that pen testing, and now they want to know what are the results. Did we fix them or not? So what happened? They immediately stopped the whole sprint. They were in the middle of the release. Everyone were called to the meeting to discuss who made the mistake and how to fix it. So developers were pulled out of their work to do the quick fixing. Testers were pulled out to do the testing and to make everything live. So the question was, whose fault is that? Is it just the product owners? Because no, it happened a lot of times, similar situation where we needed to cut everything we did, and we need to jump to the to bring down fire. So in those cases, or if some bug goes to the client, who's responsible for not discovering it? Product owner who signed off the feature, the developer who did not read their ticket, or the QA who did not bother to test that. So
Well, I think the challenge would be to change the discussion from who to what.
yeah,
Because if you're looking at who, you're looking at somebody to blame. And in the end, that's not going to help you to prevent the problem next time, because the problem is not in the person, the problem is in the situation, the problem is in the system that is somehow creating the environment where things like this can happen. So, and now it might be the product owner, next time it's the Scrum Master who misses an email, and next time it's one of the senior developers who misses something. So you don't want to look for who to blame, you want to look for what is causing people to miss out of this, email. And right now, the first thing you did is solve the problem, and that's true. When the problem actually popped up, the first thing you need to do is solve this problem. The next step could be to do a kind of causal analysis and to say, okay, can we dig deeper in why these emails are ignored? And can we dig deeper to find out what is causing this in the organization? Is it an overload situation? Is it a situation where people don't feel safe to bring up stuff? Is it maybe something that is hampering in the system, why people are missing out on stuff? Is it there's so much communication ongoing that it's hard to separate the signal from noise? There can be multiple causes for this, but if you can create at least a small or safe situation, and that would be in a kind of retrospective or causal analysis, to dive deeper in what is causing this, then you can prevent similar problems in the future. I think the good thing is that you already recognize, like, okay, this is a problem. We missed out something. We had a big problem with that in a sprint, so big that we actually had to halt the sprint and take time to solve this. That's a pretty expensive thing that you had to do in there. So you don't. This is something that you don't want to have happening in every sprint. So it's important enough to warrant that you're doing a really good investigation to see what happened, and the investigation has to be on the what, on the root causes, and not on the who, not on the person, if you want to prevent it next time. But yeah, I think what the car shows is these kind of issues can bring a major cost to teams, so it's important to sort them out. And what we see with this game right now is that the card actually triggered to bring it up, and to bring up like this is a serious problem. We missed out on this. Is this helpful, Martin?
Yes, I will try to implement it in the next company I'm going to work. But for those guys,
it's too late.
Yeah.
Well, I think even them, they might at least recognize this to say, hey, as long as we stay focused on finding somebody to blame, we're going to get similar problems again and again. So we have to really find a way to change the discussion from the who to the what to solve this kind of things. And that's the first step that they have to come aware of to prevent similar problems in the future. And let's see how we're doing time-wise. Yeah, I think we're about an hour in. Let's do one card more and see if that brings up some interesting discussions. Again, thank you, Martin, for sharing your story. And let's pick one more card. And by the way, these cards are all aspects of psychological safety. So basically the idea behind these cards is that they will help you to bring out aspects of psychological safety and to see how the safety is in your organization. So let's take the purple right now. We are willing to experiment and test our hypothesis. Okay, we see a couple of people in often, a couple of people in always, and someone in real. Is there somebody who would like to share how you're actually doing this, how you are testing your hypothesis, how you're doing experiments in your organization. Anybody who can share a story about that?
It's me again. So basically, we always try to kind of update our not just systems, all the processes that we're using, because we actually operate on the Amazon, and Amazon is ever changing, and every day basically something new is gonna pop up, and every day some new problem can happen. So it's very important to be kind of open-minded in that way, and kind of always try to have some new approach to something, even for the things that we do daily for like a longer period of time, for example, like any kind of shipments and so on. We always kind of try to make the process better, because there is always something to change and improve. So basically, like how we do it, for example, one person in the team has some idea on how certain thing can be better, then they share it. And we all kind of see if it's good, or for example, like if it will be useful, and then we kind of test it. So depending on what is it, maybe it's even, for example, make one table with certain information, so like everybody can kind of check quickly certain things. They, for example, do it, and then we, for example, test it for like a few weeks, right? And then we will basically openly kind of give feedback if it's working or if it's not, because sometimes one idea is one thing, and then when you actually put it to work, you can see if it's good or if it's maybe not that useful. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, and that's the idea behind the experiment. If you put out an experiment, you're open to whatever comes out of this. It can succeed, it can fail, and even if it fails, it's in a way successful, because you learn something. You learned like, okay, this is not working. We thought that this would work. It turns out that it's not working. Hey, we learned something, and we can use that for other things, and we can use that to decide on what we would like to do or what we would like to do differently. So it would make sense to learn in that way from an experiment. And I think that's the benefit of phrasing it like an experiment, to see how things are going. Okay, anybody else who would like to share how they do experiments?
Well, I can share. Well, on the retros, you just advised what you do good, what was bad, and also you took the action items. So when you see the often things that are repeating the action items, for example, I have the team that is with the backend developers and the SREs, and they're with each other. I mean, it's a large team, and now it raised questions. Do we need to set them apart because they're not functioning properly? Because the SREs team are dealing with an Amazon accounts, so they are an operation ones. And we want to conduct that as an experiment, because they are saying that they maybe won't be that appreciated if they don't be with the developers, the true ones, as they say, but they're also the ones that are really valuable, because without them, nothing will be, as it is. So we said, okay, this will be an experiment. So maybe we can drive you as a Scrum, as a Kanban, because it is impossible, because as they are operations, they also have the development. We can do it like a project. So maybe we had, 3 or 2 month discussions, and we finally advised that we will divide them. So this will be a little experiment, but it was a thoroughly, how can I say, discussed with also the VIPs, the CEOs, the team leads, tech leads, and everyone inputted that this will be beneficial for other teams and also for them. So that will be, we are doing that kind of hypothesis and test our experiments. So we also said that if it's not going well, we can always revert. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's also the idea behind the experiment. And this is also something that, again, can create some safety in the team. If the team is thinking about trying something new, and I'm not sure if it will work, okay, let's say like, okay, we're going to do this as an experiment. We're not sure if it's going to work. We know for sure if we don't change anything, we're still into trouble. We're still having the problem. So let's try something new. If it works, if the experiment is successful, we're going to keep it. If it's not working, then we're not going to do it anymore. Then we're going to try something else. By phrasing it as an experiment, it's going to make it easy for the team to try out something. Because every change that they make in their way of working is basically reversible. As you say, if it's not working, okay, then we stop doing it. If it worked, if it helped us, we continue. If it worked and we find a way to make it even better, we're going to change it slightly and we're going to continue it another way. All those ways are up to you. Nothing is final. Basically, if you look at that as a team, you can say everything is an experiment. Everything is something that we're going to try, and we're going to keep the good stuff, and we're going to not keep stuff that turns out that is not working. And that's going to create safety for people to try out new things and to really become better.
Yeah, nothing is written in stone, yes.
Exactly. So, cool. Well, let's move this card out of the way. So what we did actually, and I think we're getting to the end of the session, but we still have room to do some Q&A on this, is I picked up a couple of cards on different aspects of psychological safety. That was pretty random right now. I just picked a couple of topics in there, and we picked one exercise format that people could choose freely, like, okay, how is this doing in our organization? And in this Meetup are all from different organizations, but you can imagine also what happens if it's people in the same organization. If you then see a pretty diverse picture, then that is something to look at. Why do some people feel that this is something that we're doing pretty often, and why do we feel for other things that we're doing it rarely or never? What is making the difference between these kind of aspects of psychological safety? As a team, you can decide to pick out one of the cards after discussing it and say, okay, let's look back at the scores, and let's say that the card that we had in here, for instance, asking for help. Okay, that seems to be an issue. Okay, let's try out in our next sprint to ask for help more frequently because we see some problems with that and we think it's going to help us. So by doing a kind of self-assessment of psychological safety with these cards, the team can decide to pick out one or two topics that they want to work on in the next sprint because they see that it's an area that they can improve and where they would see the value in there. If you want to play with this kind of cards, it usually helps to do some kind of pre-selection. For this exercise, I just pulled a couple of cards because I didn't know what your background is or what would be the situation, your organization. If you're working in an existing organization, you usually do some pre-selection as a facilitator to pick out a couple of cards that might be relevant for teams, or you pick out cards around a certain topic to discuss it. And again, you're creating awareness and you're doing a kind of self-assessment by using these cards. Using the cards either on an online board as you did right now, or if you're working with the team on site, physical cards in there, helps also to make things visible in there. So people can pull out the card, put it in front, move it around. By having something that the people can actually touch, be it on a virtual board or be it on a real whiteboard or on a table, also helps to get people involved in there. You can move cards around, you can rank them, you can say this issue is more important than an issue. There's lots of different ways to play with these kind of cards and to, again, decide as a team what you want to be working on, what's the kind of stuff that you want to be improving in there to increase the performance of your team. So that's the kind of stuff that you can do with these kind of cards. So let me go back to the presentation. So takeaway for the session for today, as we mentioned, psychological safety being a shared belief that the environment is safe for people to take risk, interpersonal risk, because we're focusing on together. So, and being a shared belief means that it's also something that more people in the team feel about. This is not an individual opinion. This is something that the whole as a team feels like, okay, we feel safe enough to try out something, we feel safe enough to do something new. If you want to find out how your team is doing, playing a game with these guys or in any other ways, it can be a safe way to explore the safety of your teams. And it can help the team to think about, okay, what can we do to create a safe to fail environment in our team? What can we do to create conditions that we're able to try out something new and to experiment and to learn? And again, you can't just make people safe, but you can work on the factors that influence safety. You can work on the conditions. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do in there as a team member, as a facilitator for the team, as a scrum master, as a team leader, which are all small steps that can increase psychological safety. But working on these small steps, you can really significantly increase the performance of the team once people start to feel more safe. And that's something that you want to work on as a team. We're going to share the presentation also so that you have these links. Again, if you're interested in the cards, there's a discount right now for the people who are attended this meetup, benminute.com/agilehumans. There's a couple of other links in there. I think we're going to post the slides also on the meetup board so that you can look back on the presentation and find more information. And then we're right now at the Ask Me Anything. So it's question time right now. Who has a question on this?
Feel free to ask any questions because we are close to the very end of this session. So whoever wants to ask question now is the real moment for that.
Well, I have a question. How is this working with distributed teams? So when you're not in the same office, how can you make it work?
How do you make it work? Well, we're actually a distributed team right now. Not really a team, but we are distributed. So actually a way to make it work is to use a virtual whiteboard, like a Jamboard or any other whiteboard that you might have. There's a couple of things like Miro that organizations are using. But use a whiteboard and use images of the cards. And actually, if you download the card, those images are included as a way to play around with the cards. And think about a way to play with them. What I did right now for this session was to use these 4 squares. Often, rarely, never always, as a way to rank the cards. But you can also rank the cards using a kind of star rating. You can rank the card with just pulling a couple out in there. There's different playing formats that you can use with these cards. The key thing is to at least have some kind of whiteboard and make it visible, because making it visible is the key thing to support the discussions that you want to get going in there. The other thing would be to also, as I mentioned, do some kind of pre-selection on the card, because there's many topics to psychological safety. And you want to have some focus in there. So you don't want to be discussing 20 or 25 topics of psychological safety. That's simply going to be too much. For this session, we now pulled out 4 cards to have a discussion already, which is giving us a pretty insight in how organizations are doing. It's giving us information like some of the things are easier to do and some of the things are harder to do in the organization. So we're pulling out a couple of them as a way to do it. But you use a virtual whiteboard, use the cards as a way to do this. Will help you to get going also in distributed teams.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay, you're welcome. Other questions?
Okay, guys, if there is no any questions, well, I guess then we came up to the end of this session. Maya says, great talk, presentation, and cards. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Maya, and see you next time, of course. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for spending some quality time with us this night. I wish you a very successful end of the day. I hope you are going to spend it with your free time activities. Ben, thank you very much on behalf of Agile Humans, and
You're welcome.
I think in all our name. This was very great. This was very great session, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to try that cards a little bit in my surroundings. So it's going to be very fun. I'm pretty sure in
Cool.
that. Okay, guys, thank you very much. See you next time, and I wish you to have a great time after this.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Really
Bye.
useful.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye bye.